So, John, with the whole intent of your prayer magazine, that was so you could reach out to people to energize them and equip them so that prayer wasn't a reactionary thing, but a whole part of their lives,
Right.
a whole part of their lifestyle. What were some of the objectives you had? What were the lessons that you wanted them to capture as their own?
Well, when the magazine first started out, we actually were trying to reach three different audiences, which everybody said you can't do. You know, you have to really focus on one. It was that struggling prayer, but then also prayer leaders, people in churches that kind of had their role. Their role was to grow prayer in the church, and we thought, well, we'd be giving them tools to give to people and so forth. And then pastors was a part of that, and we did end up getting all three of those. But one of the things that, as I looked at what was successful about it and what we did was really trying to work toward moving them away from fix-it praying into more of the proactive praying that seeks the growth of God's kingdom, that uses prayer in like Matthew 16, the passage where Jesus asks, who do people say that I am? And you're the Christ, Peter says. And he says, well, the gates of hell won't overcome the church. And then he says, I'll give you the keys to the kingdom. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And that really talks about, the gates of hell, the gates are a defensive weapon. So that passage is talking about us coming after the enemy and pounding those gates through prayer. The remaining verses talk about binding and loosing, and which is proactive praying. So we wanted to move people into stronger intercession, aspects of intercession, even some spiritual warfare. Another primary goal that of the magazine, and this was produced by, I was working for Nav Press at the time, which was the Navigator Ministry. Great ministry, but a pretty conservative ministry from a theological standpoint. And, you look at the area of prayer, and especially proactive praying, and probably more the stronger group of prayers at that time were probably more the Pentecostal charismatic church. And so we thought, well, if we're going to be successful with a magazine on prayer, we need to do something that will bring unity, that will kind of take the best practices from different streams and that kind of a thing. And so I was so excited as we were launching the magazine, I came on a national committee called America's National Prayer Committee, which is a group of prayer leaders from national ministries, prayer ministries, that got together. There were about 20 of them then. Now there's over 100 of them that come together. And the first meeting that I had, I was put in a prayer group at one point with a woman, many of people will know her name, Evelyn Christensen, who comes from a very conservative denomination. And then there was also Bobby Byerly, who was at that time was the head of the U.S. Women's Aglow, and pretty charismatic Pentecostal organization. And Glenn Shepard, who was at that time the director of, I believe, Renewal for the Southern Baptist Convention. And so from a theological standpoint, there was a lot of differences in how they would approach prayer, perhaps. But being in that group, of course, I was just so overwhelmed. I just listened to them pray, and every now and then got a sentence in, at that time. But they were just bouncing off each other in prayer, and it so touched me to see that the theological differences were gone.
Yes.
And prayer was the great unifier of them. And so when I think about prayer and the magazine on prayer, that was what I wanted to do, was to use it and realize that as we, in a proactive way, used prayer to grow the kingdom of God, that a lot of differences, we could be unified in what we believed, and through prayer we could have a lot of unity. And so that was just an exciting time.
Beautiful.